we're going to cover the chapter today, and I've got a problem for you to do, and then next week we're going to go over pregnancy and a couple other little things. And so we sort of covered a lot of the basic stuff, and now we're going to try to put it all together. And so that's what we're going to try to do today. And then chapter 8 is a general exercise prescription, and this is a pretty good reference book for you because it goes over a lot of stuff, and the American College of Sports Medicine has 2 certification exams. One is the personal trainer exam, and the other is the certified exercise physiologist exam. Okay, and so you have to graduate before you, or be in your last semester before you can take the certified exercise physiology exam. Okay, and so that's a pretty distinguished certification. It's not like the weekend workshop. You go and spend the weekend and pay your money and get a certification. And so it's a well-respected certification. The personal trainer is well-respected also, but I don't think you have to have a degree to be the certified personal trainer through the American College of Sports Medicine. But if we ranked all the certifications, the ACSM would be the highest. Okay, and so from the academic standpoint, and in terms of quality and quantity and respect, that's the highest one, American College of Sports Medicine. For strength training people, is the strength and conditioning certification. Okay, and I think they may have a personal trainer one too. But you sit in this class for weeks, and then somebody goes and spends a weekend, takes an exam, and they're certified. So who gets the best education? The weekend certification or the academic certification? Academics, right? Because you studied and you know it, and you know about energy systems, you know about this and that, and so forth. You don't know it all, but you got a pretty good background. And traditionally, our students do well in the science stuff. The places they tend to struggle are in the applied stuff because we don't have enough time to put you with a strength conditioning coach or something like that and spend time and learn and that kind of stuff. So this book, this would be a study book for the ACSM Certified Exercise Physiologist. Now, another certificate, they have different certifications. They have a clinical certification. Now, clinical certification means that you have to have put in so many hours in a hospital or a lab and have to be able to read EKGs and that kind of stuff. So that's the clinical certification, okay? And so, and you'll have to have so many hours documented under a hospital or a lab, okay? Most of you will probably not do the clinical, okay, unless you're working that particular area. Most of you would do the general certified exercise physiology exam. I took it a few years ago just to see what was on it, and just to see, so I'd know more about the general certified exercise physiology exam. So I took the test, passed it. I think my time's run out, but they'll look at your transcripts and they'll make sure you've had anatomy and physiology, and there's certain courses you have to have before they'll even let you take the exam. Okay, and so it's a good exam there. In this class, we've done mostly general exercise prescription that's like the main person walking down the street, right? And so if you wanted to be a personal trainer, it depends on what gym it is and what they require. And so in the past, with the people we had over in our wellness center, if you passed this class, you could qualify as a personal trainer in that facility. Okay, and so most of those people have left, and they've got new people working there. So I don't know what the qualifications are. But if you wanted to be a personal trainer, well, there's nobody over there to train right now. But when we had the community there, they had lots of older people and doctors, lawyers, professionals that wanted somebody to train them, and our students trained a lot of people in town. So you can make some money being a personal trainer. Some people do it for a living. That's for the rest of their life, okay? And so the fees are between $20 and $100 an hour, depending on where you work and who you work with and stuff like that. So they vary a lot there. It's fairly cheap in Alabama, but if you go to a big city or whatever, the rates tend to vary. So think about that. You know, if you're interested, you know, if you go into PT school, you'll be a doctor of physical therapy. Okay, it used to be just a certified physical therapist, and then they started trying to get their license and certification up with other competitors and so forth. So now it's a doctor of physical therapy, and so you can be a doctor of exercise physiology just as easy as you can be a doctor of physical therapy. Okay, and so that may be a route. If you like research, you like studying, you like school, and you like the stuff that we do here, you can be a teacher or whatever. That's another option. Macbeth, you'd be a really good professor. Huh?
It's something on the back of my mind, maybe in the future.
And I went to physical therapy this morning because I've got a shoulder impingement. And Tiffany Higginbotham, she was my student in a class like this, and so I trust Tiffany. I know she's not going to mess me up. And so I went and met with her at 6 a.m. So working on my shoulder. But those are some options for you. And so, are you through with education after you graduate from this class? Well, you can be, but just a bachelor's degree in exercise science without something else on it, you got to be competitive, okay? And so that's the goal, to make you competitive as a strength conditioning coach or whatever. And we've got people all over the country and world that have come through our classes and our programs and so forth. So a little bit about that. Okay, look on chapter 8. And so, page 126 in your book, exercise prescription for all. What does that mean? It means just for the average person, right? It means a person walking down the street, or your parents, or grandparents, or friends, or whatever. That's what all means. Okay? We have the 5 domains of health: emotional health, social health, physical health, mental health, spiritual health. Out of those 5, I only know about one of them. Which one is that? Physical. Emotionally, you come to me for emotional guidance, you're out of luck. Okay, spiritual, out of luck. Okay, I don't know that. I don't study it, and so forth. And so that's just not my area. But we do have professionals in those areas. And when you take the Certified Exercise Physiology exam, you will have questions in those areas. Okay, and so you have questions on different strategies to improve people's behavior, to get them to exercise. We don't teach a class in that in our program, but they ask a lot of questions. Okay, how do you motivate people? What domains are you going to go to, and so forth. So I took the certification exam. I had to go study all that stuff to learn it because I'd never had it. I didn't know anything about it, and so they've got the social cognitive theory and environmental theories and all these different theories, and so those are some things that you need to be aware of. And one thing I did is on Blackboard, I put a personal trainer exam on there. And those are some questions that they ask people on the ACSM personal trainer exam. There's 161 questions on there, okay? And so for our exam this weekend, you will go in and take that exam, okay? It's not the traditional questions that are graded. You'll have an answer key, you'll have the questions, you read the questions, and see if you know the answer to the questions, okay? And so, I just want you to take it. You're not gonna make 100 on it. I promise you. You're not gonna make close to 100 on it, because there's a lot of stuff on there that we haven't covered, we haven't talked about, and you're not familiar with. And so, there's 161 questions. If you can get 130 questions right, you're doing really good. Okay? I know some of you are competitive and want to make 100 on everything, but you're not going to make 100 on that. Okay? So about 130 would be a really good score. Okay? Then, after you read it and take it, and I can tell if you go in there and read it and take and do whatever you're supposed to do. Okay? Because Blackboard will track you if you download it and that kind of stuff. So I'll have an information. Then you'll go into the test, and then you open up the personal trainer test. And then after you've read the questions and answered the questions, then you go into Blackboard, and there's a test that says personal trainer test. It's a fill in the blank, and the answer is 161. One question, one answer. I just told you the answer. So when you do the answer, you're going to get 10 extra points on your final exam. See how nice I am? So you get 10 extra points by doing what? Taking the test, just seeing how you do, seeing what areas you're strong in, seeing what areas you're weak in, and then for you to get the 10 extra points, you go into the test and fill out that 161, fill in the blank. Don't put 162, don't put 160, don't spell out 160, you just put number 161. And then you get what?
10 extra points.
You get 10 points that show up in Blackboard on your test. And then the stuff we're covering today and next week will be on your final exam. Okay, and so we'll go over that. So our schedule is class today, class Monday, class Wednesday, and then for the weekend, I'll just do the online exam, and you'll take it, and then you'll be finished. Okay, and so you'll be finished with class, and then at 8 a.m. on Monday, Wednesday, you can do whatever you do. Right? Make sense? Y'all got it? Okay. Sounds good. Dash, you happy? Huh? You happy? You hungry? Hungry and happy, huh? Good for you. Okay, let's look at this chapter. And you should know this, on page 128, you've got the health-related components of fitness. Cardiorespiratory, muscle strength, muscle endurance, body composition, and flexibility, right? We've talked about all those, and you should know something about them. They first started doing fitness tests in the United States, and I can give you a history of that. And years ago, I guess this was in the 50s, there was a doctor, orthopedist that came from Germany, and his name was Dr. Kraus. Dr. Kraus was the physician for President Eisenhower. He was the president's doctor, okay? Like all the presidents have their doctor. He was the doctor. And so he did a study, and he compared American youth versus European youth in terms of fitness. And so he found out that the European youth were much fitter than the American youth. Now back then, because of wars and that kind of stuff, fitness was big time, right? Because they needed people to fight. If you weren't fit, you couldn't fight, you couldn't go in the army. World War II, almost every single male who could possibly wear a uniform was in the military, okay? all the women were working in factories and working to try to produce goods and stuff, bullets and parts for Jeeps and machine guns and all that kind of stuff. Because we were in a world war and the U.S. was on the line, you either win or lose, right? And so everybody came together like in World War II. All of us would be doing something related to winning the war, okay? Whether it was giving up your pots and pans to make bullets or whatever you did. Everybody sacrificed then. So Dr. Krauss said, okay, these Americans aren't that fit. Look at these Europeans, they're much fitter. And his test wasn't a great test. It was mainly an orthopedic test, looking at strength and flexibility, kinds of things. And so he did his study, and so then President Kennedy got to be president. And Kennedy was a popular president, okay? Eisenhower was the war president, the general. And so then Kennedy came in, and Kennedy had back issues and back problems, but Kennedy was the pretty boy from Boston, and had a good-looking family, wife, politicians, all that kind of stuff. Kennedy had back problems and had severe back problems, and he probably couldn't do one sit-up. But he was a war hero. He was on a PT boat in the ocean, and his boat sunk some ships and that kind of stuff. So at that time, we had the President's Council on Physical Fitness, and physical fitness was a big part of our country. Now you can't find physical fitness any place around. You know, they've got all these appointments of this and that, finance and environment. Well, fitness we're not even on the radar, okay? But back then, fitness was really, really, really big. And so they did the study, and so even Kennedy wrote in Sports Illustrated an article about fitness and why the nation needed to be fit and so forth. So it was a big, big issue. Now, the fitness test they used back then, it wasn't a health-related fitness test. It was more of a skill-related fitness test. So when I was in high school, we had to run the 60-yard dash. We had to do a broad jump. We had to see how far we could throw a softball. We had to do a agility thing. We had to climb a rope and that kind of stuff. Okay? And so all those are skill-related components of fitness, skill-related. Then, through the years, they said, okay, so you can't throw a softball that far. Does that have anything to do with your health? No. Well, maybe you can't do a long, broad jump. Okay. And so we had to stand on the line to see how far we could jump. Does that have anything to do with your cardiovascular fitness or anything? Nope. And so then everything went from skill-related fitness to the components of fitness that we have now. And so if you took the fitness test in high school in Alabama, it was health-related, right? You did the pacer test, you did push-ups, you did sit-ups, and so forth. They don't have a body composition thing there, but you did the sit and reach thing there. And so now everything is health-related. So we have health-related components, and we have what? Skill-related components. And so we've sort of traversed from skill to health over time. Now, if we look at the skill-related, you know what agility is, right? Agility is the ability to do what? Change directions quickly, right? And so balance, you know what balance is, you know what coordination is, you know what power is, you know what speed is, you know what reaction time is. All those are important maybe for sports, right? And back in the old days, baseball was the big sport. Every little town in Alabama played the other little town on Saturday night, and that's where everybody went after they got working in the factory or the garden or wherever they worked. They would go and watch their town play another town in baseball and so forth. So it was a social thing, and baseball was huge back then. And you know, all they had was radio, and they listened to baseball on the radio, and that kind of stuff. So things have changed a little bit since then. And then We have the medical related components, and so those relate to our different organs and our different systems in terms of, how fit is your heart, how fit are your kidneys, and so forth. So that's a little history in terms of where we've come in terms of mainly the agility performance items to what? Health related kinds of items, right? And so that's where we get our background from. And it's interesting reading if you ever want to read the history of fitness in the United States. Okay, then on page 130, there is the summary of the American College of Sports Medicine fit components. And we've been over all of these. We're sort of putting them together now. Aerobic frequency, you know that, right? And so, 5 days a week of moderate, 3 days a week of vigorous, and so forth. So those are the basic guidelines. Now, as a personal trainer, would you want to follow these guidelines? You wouldn't?
I'd change it up a little bit.
Yeah, you would want to make sure you include these, but you can do what? Modify, vary, depending upon the goals of your client. And so if all your client wants to do is lose weight, well, you do a lot of exercises that burn energy and burn calories, right? But you would also want to include what? Some resistance exercise. You'd also want to include some flexibility exercise, and you want to include some different kinds of things. Just observing personal trainers, it's like, my question is, when I watch them, why are they doing that? What are the goals of the client, right? And so, why are they taking this 350-pound person and lifting weights with them every single day? They're not doing any walking, they're not doing any aerobic training, they're not doing any balance, they're not doing anything else. And so you want to get the goals, and then normally people like to do what they're good at. Okay? Like I like to run. I swim because I have to. Okay? And so you do what you like to do and are better at, right? And so, we talked about flexibility, being the Cinderella, right? How many people like to go stand someplace and touch their toes for so long? Is that fun? It's not exciting, but it's probably something that you need to do to work on your flexibility. So we've got aerobic, we've got the intensity. Of all the variables, the intensity is the hardest one to come up with. We can come up with some basic guidelines, but then how are you going to measure intensity? How are you going to monitor intensity? We can do it with heart rate, we can do it with RPE, we can do it with different scales and charts and so forth, but that's more difficult to do, okay? But if the intensity isn't intense enough, your client doesn't get the best benefits from the training program, right? And so if you're an athlete, we work at high intensity because they compete at high intensity, right? And so what may be high intensity for one person in this class may be low intensity for another person in this class, right? So it's all individual. It's all individual there. Time and duration, that's simple, right? You got a client, you're probably not going to keep them longer than what? An hour, right? Come in, get their hour in, and within that hour, you got to figure out how to do all these different variables there. Mode, what's the mode? Mode means what type of equipment, they're going to do group exercise, or they're going to do spinning, or whatever you're going to prescribe for that person there. Volume is important because it takes a certain amount of exercise to get any kind of benefits. And so if you don't have enough total exercise, they're not going to lower their blood pressure, they're not going to lose weight, they're not going to increase the fitness of their heart. If they only do 1 day a week, they're not going to get much improvement in anything. 2 days a week, a little better. 3 days a week, even better. 4 days a week, better. 5 days a week, better. And so the more volume, the more benefit they get. But you don't start out with 5 days a week. You could, but if you do that, start out at low intensity and do what?
Work
up, right? And so volume's important, real important for benefits, and most people don't even look at volume or think about volume there. Okay, and this talks about multiple sessions versus a single session. You can get the same benefits from 10, 10, 10 as you can from 30 because the volume is the same. Make sense? We're looking at total amount of exercise. So we got that. Then we've got the progression. Remember periodization, remember progression. If you do the same thing every day, you don't get any better, okay? Now it's good for fitness. You maintain your fitness, but you don't tend to progress or improve. So you've got to add a little bit more, right? And what do we call that principle?
General adaptation.
Yeah, general adaptation or overload principle, right? We tend to, our muscles adapt and they get used to, say you curl 50 pounds, well, and you do that every day, you'll reach a point where you don't get any better and don't improve. It's going to take 60 pounds or add some more reps or add some more sets, all right? And so we add until we increase the amount of work they do. So we've got resistance training, we've got lines for flexibility, neuromotor training. We don't talk a lot about that, but with older people, the number one issue is falls or lack of balance and so forth. So you need to do some of that type of training too, in terms of who you're working with and who your clients are and so forth. So this chapter talks a little bit about each of those variables. Now, you got a sheet of paper, and you're going to address those variables here. And so this is like a study thing for your final exam. So I'm giving you a case study. Okay. Now, I don't need any car warranty. Okay, exercise prescription. So we got Jimmy B, and we've got a little bit of information about what? About Jimmy, right? Okay. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to take this person and the variables that we just listed there, right? You're going to figure out an exercise prescription for this particular person. So you're going to calculate his positive and negative risk factors. And so you're going to go in your book, look at the positive and negative risk factors, and say, hey, this is positive, this is negative. That's simple to do. Then, what is his VO2 max? Okay, you haven't had this, and this is new to you. And so what it is this is an equation that calculates VO2 max based upon running speed or walking speed. Okay? And the way it works is we have equations that we can calculate how much oxygen somebody uses when they run or when they walk. So if I said, okay, Jennifer's going to walk at 3 miles an hour, okay, for and this is her height, this is her weight, and so forth, and we want to know how many calories she's going to burn, or what's her VO2 to walk at 3 miles an hour. Now, we have a formula that will do that and do the calculation. Now, we can put her on a treadmill and have her walk, and we can have her hooked up to the metabolic system and measure how much oxygen she's using. But what we're doing here is we're predicting that. So we're predicting her VO2 based upon walking. Now, there's a formula for walking, there's a formula for running, there's a formula for cycling. So we've got different formulas based upon different types of activity. So here, what we have the formula for walking. Now, what speeds are considered walking? Okay, if we go and we speed up and speed up and speed up, we walk, and then we get, do we walk or do we jog? Well, we get to that uncomfortable speed, right? Some people will be walking, some people will be jogging at a certain speed, right? So this formula is only good if we know what they're doing in terms of mode of exercise. Walking is normally 4 miles an hour or less. Okay? It's like a 20-minute mile or less. Now, some people can walk faster than that, and some people can't walk that fast. Okay? Then, as we get past walking, we get into what? Jogging, right? And so you get on the treadmill and you always get to a speed. Okay, I'm walking. Okay, I got to sort of catch up. I got to jog a little bit. Okay, and then finally we speed it up, and then eventually you're doing what? Running, right? So there's another equation for running. So here, the example I've given you here, VO2 equals speed times 0.1 plus, with most treadmill tests, we put it on the incline to make them work harder. So here, this is the speed, and then we've got the incline times 1.8, and then we add back in 3.5. So why do we add back in the 3.5? Because we're measuring the amount of work you do, and then we're also adding in the amount of oxygen you use while you're at rest. Because 1 minute is what? 3.5, right? Milliliters per kilogram per minute. So, first thing you've got to do, if it's in miles per hour, you've got to convert it to meters per minute, the speed. So the speed in the formula is in meters per minute. 1 mile an hour is 26.8 meters per minute. So you got the conversion, right? So you can convert miles per hour to what? Meters per minute, so it'll go into the equation. If you just put miles per hour into the equation, it doesn't work. So we take miles per hour, convert it to what? Meters per minute, right? And use the conversion 26.8. So I give you an example here of how to use the formula. So VO2, I give you the example of 3 miles per hour, okay? And so Jimmy B is doing, what is he doing? 2.5 miles per hour. So his numbers will be a little different than the 3 miles per hour. So we've got 3 miles per hour times 26.8. That gives you the conversion, right? For speed, times 0.1, which is part of the equation, minus, no, that's plus 3 miles an hour, and then you do that times 26.8 again. Then we've got the grade, so he's walking up a 5% grade on the treadmill. Then we multiply that times 1.8, and then add back in the 3.5. And so then we do the mathematics, and this VO2 equals 18.776. VO2 max equals 18.776. That is the energy cost, or the amount of oxygen that somebody that walked at that particular speed would use to keep them going, right? It could be, we could measure it at max. Now, if this is a max VO2, it says max over here, but it may be just, I want to see how much oxygen you use to go into 3 miles an hour, or I want to see how much oxygen you use if 3 miles an hour is your maximal level. Make sense? And so we can do it at max or at any level of intensity we want to give. Now, if I give you an example of running, well, that would be greater than what? 4 miles an hour, right? And so I'd have to tell you, hey, this person is running, and then if we give you that, then the formula is different, right? So it changes the formula a little bit if we give you a speed greater than 3 or 4 miles an hour. Then we get the faster speed. So what do they call this equation? What's the name of this equation? It's called a metabolic equation. And if you took the ACSM certification exam, they'll give you some problems, and you can use a calculator, and I think they give you the formula. And you can calculate VO2 from a formula. Make sense? And so all you need is what? You need the running speed, right? And you need what? The grade, right? And then you can calculate the formula. There's also formulas for cycling. The ones for cycling, weight is involved in those calculations, but it's just simple formulas. You just got to take the formula, plug in the stuff, and then you get a value. VO2 max in milliliters per kilogram per minute, we can convert that back to liters per minute, right? If we know its weight, and then we can calculate how many calories it burned at that particular speed, and so forth. So, I give you some information there. Okay, so here's what we want to know. Okay, what are your goals for this individual? So we'll read about him and say, hey, you know, what do you think we need to do with this person, right? What are some goals? And then if it's your real client, what would you do? You talk to them about the goals. You know, what about flexibility? You know, we did the sit and reach test and you couldn't even reach the box. Maybe we need to work on that a little bit. Or your body composition or whatever. And so you look and see, and you help the person with their goals. Body mass index, right? Weight in kilograms divided by height in meters square. Intensity. And so you would do the intensity based on heart rate reserve, and that's in the charts in your book. Met level, met minutes. What's a met minute? If I work at 1 met for 2 minutes, I've done what? 2 met minutes, right? I've worked at 3 mets for 3 minutes, that's 9 met minutes, right? And so there's recommendations based on met minutes in terms of burning calories and exercise there. So we can calculate caloric expenditure based upon the intensity that the person works at, based upon METs, based on age, is his cardiovascular fitness level, what is his fitness level? So for this example, I'd look on the chart in the book, the person's VO2 is 18.77 and they're a certain age, what is that person's fitness level? Simple, we just look at the norms there. We develop an exercise program for this person. What is the frequency, intensity, duration, mode, volume, pattern, all the things that we looked at on that chart earlier, right? Okay. So this is an example of what? A case study of one person that you develop an exercise prescription for. So what we're going to do today, I want you to get in groups of 4 or less. That means 4, 3, 2, or 1. No, 1 can't be a group. 4, 3, or 2, right? Groups of 4, 3, or 2. I want you to start working on this and see if you can figure out how to do this little case study.